Howdy, folks. My name's James Grant, and many of you know me because I own the Arizona Stage Line. And prior to that, I was carrying mail up here from California for several years, sometimes by horseback, sometimes by wagon. I'm here today to celebrate a special occasion with you. This day, on September 28, 1869, Prescott will actually have a luxurious stagecoach line directly from here to San Bernardino, California. Yes. Now, I would like to tell you a lot about the stagecoach itself, but before I do that, how many of you have tickets already? Oh, not many. Well, hurry up, they're going fast. It'll cost you a mere $45 to go from here to La Paz, which is Colorado River. To get to San Bernardino, it's going to cost you $75. Now, that might sound a little high, but wait till you see the accommodation you're going to have. Now, I can't have the coach here to show you because we're getting ready for the return trip, and we're stocking it with mail, which is the primary purpose I run the stage. So let me begin with saying we're going to use the top-of-the-line stagecoach, the best you can buy, the Concord stage. And I'm going to buy two of them, one for the up run and one for the down run. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about the characters of the stage. Like I say, it's not here, but I can tell you that it's a 12-person stage cabinet, 12 people inside, away from the weather, and also it has very unique features. It's a very heavy coach. It's about 1,800 pounds empty. But since we have a nice wagon road now around Granite Mountain going down to the Colorado River, I can use such a heavy coach. And it will keep you on the road a lot better. The other advantage is that it has what they call leather through bracing. Leather through bracing does two things, only one of which you're interested in. So I'll tell you what the first one is, and then I'll tell you one you're interested in. The first one is that it gives momentum to the stage so that when the stage is slowing down or getting dragged down, it'll help the animals pull the stage better. Now, what you're interested in is how comfortable is it? Well, all of you have ridden horses and stages and buggies, so you know the movement, right? The movement. And sometimes it gets very tiring, the movement. But on my stage, the movement is like this, like a swing. So you'll have a much pleasant ride riding on my stage. Now, we can carry a number of passengers. I already told you can put 12 in the inside. That's 4 in the front seat, 4 in the back seat, and we have a fold-down seat for 4. And of course, it has a back brace because I know you want to be able to support your back. Now, we do have 2 what they call ditty seats. In your language, extra seats. At the rear of the stage, on the very top, you can set backwards, and I can put 4 people up there. And it has a footrest. And now, right behind the driver's box, there's another seat, which I can put 4 people on. So I can put a total of 20 passengers on here. Now, in addition to that, I'm going to be on as the stage driver. Some people call me the whip. Other people call me the Yahoo. In addition to myself, because we're going to be carrying a Wells Fargo box, which I assume has money or something in it, because they're going to bring an armed guard on with it, sometimes called the shotgun. And he works for Wells Fargo, but he will be with us. And he will be carrying a weapon, as I am. So, in addition to that, as I say, we're filling it up with mail right now. Normally we have anywhere from 300 to 400 pounds of mail. But because we have such a large coach and such a sturdy coach, we can have each one of you provide 25 pounds of baggage. Now, that's with an exception, because I don't know how much mail is going to be there. When I find out how much mail is going to be there, perhaps your bags can't go. And if there's a lot of mail, perhaps you can't go, because the mail has the priority. Okay? So you know a lot about the coach right now and how it works. So the next thing I want to discuss is how long does it really take? And a couple safety precautions for those people that are hanging on, so to speak. First of all, it's going to take us 4 complete days and nights to get to the Colorado River. We don't stop overnight. You sleep on a stage. Hence, the people that are on top of the stage, we've given a rope. So you tie yourself on, because I'm not going to stop if you fall off. Now, to get to San Bernardino, it's going to take 6 days and nights to get to San Bernardino, and I'll tell you a little bit about how you get there in a few minutes coming up. Now, before we board, we've got the mail. We're going to have the mail aboard before we board. We're going to have the express box aboard, and then we're going to hook up 6 mules to pull it. Now, you might say, why did you go out and buy a very fancy coach and then get mules to pull it? Well, mules are much better in the mountains. They are as expensive, if not more expensive, than horses. They also, pound for pound, can pull more weight than a horse from a dead stop. And if that's not enough, they're not finicky eaters. So we're going to use those mules. Now, before you all get onto the coach, which will be brought up shortly, I have to lay down some law as far as the rules of the road. The first and most important rule that you all have to know is I'm the boss, just like the captain on the ship, because I'm responsible for the security of the mail, your safety, and also the safety of the coach and the team. So, the second rule is, I notice many of you men have sidearms. Great, but keep them in your holster unless I tell you to take them out. Okay? Now you, sir, have got a bottle of bourbon. I can see it from here. You're welcome to bring it aboard, as long as you're willing to share it with everyone that wants to share it, and nobody gets drunk. Okay? Now, I noticed a few people back there chewing tobacco. You, ma'am, I noticed that. And please remember, when we're traveling along, spit with the wind, not against the wind. Okay? There's no fighting in the coach. And last but not least, sometimes we have women and children, which is very unusual. But when we do, there is no cursing or swearing or cussing in the coach. Now, this is your one and only warning. Once we start, if you misbehave and I have to stop the stage, that's going to slow down the mail. That's going to inconvenience the other passengers, but not as much as you're going to be inconvenienced, because night or day, Indian country, snow or hell, you're getting off the stage, and your bags are getting off the stage. And you will not be able to get a stage for at least a week. And you will not get any refund. So if that's not enough to keep you in line, I don't know what is. So now let me tell you a little bit about the route that we're going to take, because we haven't taken this route before. We take the route around Granite Mountain because that's the way the wagon road goes. So to go west, we got to go east. And we have what we call way stations and main stations. Way stations are not for you. They're for the mules. The way station is nothing more than a simple corral with water and feed, and perhaps a couple extra mules. If you want to jump off, you're fine, but if we're leaving, you're going to be there till next week if you don't catch the stage. And we don't reserve seats. So, now we do have main stations about every 50 or 60 miles. At the main station, we stop maybe an hour and a half, depending on what we have to do. And we'll be greasing the wheels on the wagon. We may be changing the team out. We may be changing the driver out. But you don't need to know all that, because you'll be at the station. And in the station, you can buy a meal. Meals are not included in your ticket. So, since they're not included in your ticket, I feel obligated to tell you a little bit about the meals. First of all, they're pretty much the same wherever you buy them, whatever station. They differ in price by station, primarily by quality, and perhaps one station might give you a pickle and the other one doesn't. But, so the costs average about $1.50 a meal. You're going to get a potato, you're going to get 2 biscuits, a cup of coffee, and a cup of water, a slab of beefsteak, or if you're lucky, a slab of bacon. You can have as many servings as you want, pay for each serving, of course. And like I say, it doesn't change much as you're traveling around, and they don't really serve lunch. They only have breakfast and dinner, but you can make it whatever you want. Now, so once we get started, some of the main stations that we will hit are going to be American Ranch, which is about 16 miles northeast of here. Remember, I said we have to go north to go south. And then we're going to go to Skull Valley. And then we're going to Date Creek Reservation Station. Then we're going to go to Wickenburg. And we have about 3 or 4 more stations en route, main stations en route. Now, there's a lot of way stations, but like I say, they're not for you, so you need to worry about them. Now, once we board and we start to American Ranch, it'll take us, American Ranch is about 15, 16 miles northeast of here. It will take us roughly about 3 to 4 hours to get there, if there's not too much time on the road for some reason. Most stagecoaches, and mine included, throughout the mountains, they range from 4 to 8 miles an hour. So don't worry about whiplash. Okay? No. So when we get to American Ranch, we'll drop you off, we'll get the stuff ready, and then when we're ready to go, we'll call for boarding. Please be on time, because if not, you'll be at American Ranch until next week. Now, when we start up at American Ranch, we start up the mountain. Now remember, we're at 5,200 feet right now. But for every 100 feet we go up, those mules are pulling 6,000 pounds. So I'm reasonably sure, based on my experience, within an hour or so, they're not going to be able to pull the weight because of the oxygen. And guess what? You all get out and walk. Be prepared to walk anywhere from 2 to 5 miles. And don't worry, we're not going to leave you behind, because we're going to be behind you. So when I feel that the mules have recovered enough, then I'll allow you to reboard the stage. Now, there's a couple other hazards we have to think about. Of course, there's a general hazard. We're going out into nowhere land. There is no military out there. There is no law enforcement. Very few settlements, very remote areas. And of course, we're carrying lots of cash. You're carrying lots of cash. And the mail is the only way to take cash from town to town. So we're like a roving target going out through the middle of the isolated area, and they know when we're going to be there and where we're going to be. So with that in mind, I want to start first by saying, you all know that we're in hostile Indian country. You're not tenderfoots. But luckily for us, Indians very seldom attack stages. There have been some attacks, but none on this route, and we don't expect any. They usually attack for 2 reasons. One is simple revenge. Somebody like us did something to them, and they're going to do it to us. The other reason is they want the mules to eat. So I don't expect that's going to happen, but it should happen. I'm going to stop the stage. Myself and the armed messenger will get down, we'll go around to the coach, open the coach door, and herd you all back toward the boot. That's the rear of the stage. And then, gentlemen, we only have 2 choices. Either we scare them off or we fight them off. And that's when I will tell you to take the revolver out of your holster. Now, I say that because when we're such a remote area, there's no chance that the Army or anybody's going to come to our assistance. But like I say, it's unusual and be highly unusual for them to do anything on this route. However, because I've told you we have lots of cash on board, it is very likely that some either newbie bandit or professional robber will decide to take a crack at us. Now, luckily, we know where that happens. We know that they do it when we're going slow, and you're probably saying going slow. I'm talking about starting up a mountain or going across a creek at 2 miles an hour. Now, they'll also pick an area where they got bushes or trees on the side so they can hide because they don't want us to see them before we get there. Now, our mitigation for that is when we get close to those areas, you'll see us slow down, And while you think we're sleeping, we're actually looking in those areas for a glint of metal or glass or any movement. Now, ma'am, I don't want you to get excited when you hear the shotgun blast, because we're not going to walk down there to find out if anybody's in there. If we see movement, we're going to find out definitely by just firing around in there. Now, assuming we don't see anybody, and it seems all clear, we could be mistaken. So we get all the way up there, and all of a sudden, somebody jumps right out in front of me, right out in front of the lead mule. And guess what he's holding? He has a mask on, and he's holding a double-barrel shotgun, which has 2 triggers. Now, I'm no more than about 8 feet, 6 feet from him, as is the armed guard. There is no way that I could pull this gun, nor could the armed guard guide his gun before we'd both be killed or injured. If that happened, it certainly wouldn't help you, let alone us. So we follow common sense, which happens to be company policy, by stopping the stage. When we stop the stage, the robber, and usually there's only one, but with a shotgun you become more than one. And he will say, throw down the box, which we will do. Then he will tell us to get down and throw down our guns, which we will do. Then he will tell us to walk over and open the coach and get you all out, and you will line up like you're lined up now, except you're standing. And they will go down, he will go right down, pointing that lovely shotgun at 3 of you as he goes. And right down, he'll go down and say, yeah, I know you got some money. Have you hidden it under your hat? Take your hat off and I'll know. Then he'll go down here and say, you got some nice jewelry. You know, I need that jewelry. And you're going to try to keep it by saying it's my great-grandmother's. Say, they don't care. You know, either if you don't give it to them, they're going to tear it off of you. So it's better you give it to them. Now, also, another place is going to ask you to lift your shirt. And you're going to say, well, what do you do that for? Because a lot of people wear money belts when they have a lot of money that they're carrying. Also, women, a lot of times they'll ask you to run your fingers through your hair, because people are sneaky. They put jewelry in their hair and stuff like that. So once they get done with all that fun, then he's going to say, okay, you 2 guys look pretty hefty. Go to the back of the stage and take those 400 pounds of mail bags and throw them out. And if he's really professional, he'll say, go ahead and cut them open for me. But sometimes they don't. Once that's done, he's really done with us. So he's going to say, get back on the stage and hightail it out. Man, I'm going to hightail it out, but got to realize that the best I can do is about 3 and 4 miles an hour, and the next station is close to 60 miles away. You know. So, what have we learned from this? We have learned that you're all alive, that you have your tickets, that the bags are still on the stage. You're still on your way, and when you get there, you will have one hell of a story to tell all your friends. So, now, the other question sometimes that comes up, do you have lights on the stage? Of course we have lights. We have 2 lanterns by my feet in the driver's box, which have nothing to do with you. So I can at least see the reins. I don't want to scare you, but I don't see the lead mules most of the time. And the way we do that is because my memory and the mule's memory, along with moonlight, will get us there safely. Now, once we get to La Paz, those with the $45 tickets will get off with your bags. Those that are going to San Bernardino will get off and take a rest break, and then pick up your bags and take them over to the ferrymaster. We don't provide baggage transfer. When you get to the ferrymaster, you have to buy a ticket. It's not included in your ticket. One of the reasons we're not sure what the fare will be, it kind of depends on the ferrymaster. Now, once you get across the Colorado River, there'll be a nice California stage waiting for you to take you another lovely 200 miles to San Bernardino, California, your exit point. Now, let me step out of character and reintroduce myself and give you some facts. I'm Bob Baker, and I'm a docent here, and I regularly do portray James Grant living history, along with a bunch of other characters that care not to remember. Now, some of the questions I usually get asked are, how much money is that in real time? Well, using what 2024 is, A dollar in 1870 is worth $24 today in value. So that $45 ticket is going to cost you $1,000. The $75 ticket will cost you $1,800, and that little $1.50 meal was $36. Now, I also want to point out some things on the stage, if I can get this first. Uh-oh. Maybe I got it backwards. Uh-oh. Where's Greg? Clicker's not working. I could go over there to the computer, but I might mess it all up. Maybe it turned off. It was working just a minute ago. There you go. Yay. Well, I want to put this up because this is a picture of the stage. And the stage, as you know, is over in the transportation building. Now, remember I talked about the ditty seats? See the foothold right there? And there's the second ditty seat right up there. And there's the nice 12-person cabin. And here's the, you can barely see it, there it is. There's the leather through brace on it. And this is the driver's box up here. And the express box would be down in there. Now, there are two general stage types of wagons that are used for stage. Concourse is the most expensive and most well-built. They were all built by Abbott Dowling in Concord, New Hampshire. And believe it or not, they sold them by boat all the way around to San Francisco to get them to the west. That's how well they were built. Now, after about 10 years or so, people started copying them out, obviously. But they're very well built. They have super strength wood, very well seasoned. They have iron straps under the underpinning, under the undercarriage, and also on the wooden sides. They also have steel rims on the tires. And they're known to last 10 to 15 years, which is unusual for a stage out in this area. So that they come in models of 6-passenger, 8-passenger, and 12-passenger. And they will cost you a mere $5,000 in 1870. And remember, I bought 2 of them for the stage.
So I see the military up there. It was also used for military transport?
Yeah. Anybody could buy it. As long as you had the ticket, you could get on. Now, one of the things about stages that when I gave you the prices for that is you must realize the everyday common man didn't ride the stage. It was military officials, business officials, commerce people. If there was payroll in the box, the Wells Fargo box, the paymaster was always aboard. Sometimes we'd have a few joy girls, but they didn't pay their own ticket. But anybody could pay that wanted to go on the stage if there was room. Now, the other stage, which is much more common, is the celerity stage, and you know by the name, it's the speedier stage. It's very light built. It's probably half the price, maybe even lower than that of a Concorde. You get 8 to 10 people in there. If you have a small number of people, the back seats fold down so you can actually sleep. And all the sides and the roof are canvas. And they usually pull it with 4 horses. Most of the time, believe it or not, they use wild horses, Mustangs, and that makes it go fast. But when you hear about a celerity stage, that's sort of a generic category. There's all sorts of them. And I'll show you another one later on as we get into here. Oops. Now, in his address to the legislature, Governor McCormick stated, and I'll just read this one, "I am ashamed to say that to this day there's not a stagecoach running in Arizona, although the territory is organized nearly 3 years." Now, these are the stagecoach routes I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk very long on them because I'm not allowed to stay over time. But the first one is the Arizona stage line we just learned about. It later became the California and Arizona stage line, and that's right here, the blue line, going down to La Paz and Leesburg through Camp Date Creek. Now the next one is the Star Line Mail Transport Company, also known as the Santa Fe Prescott Stage, and it came in here around St. John, came through Sunset Crossing down to Camp Verde into Prescott. And then we have the Black Canyon stage, which is the most recent of the stages, and it would have come down this way to Phoenix. It was put on in after they started the new Black Canyon Road. And then finally we have the granddaddy of them all, the Overland Mail Company, which you all probably know is the Butterfield stage line. Started in 1858, ended in 1861, came to Arizona, and it came through Arizona on this line here, through Wilcox, through Tucson, Pima Villages, Gila Station, and then through Yuma. Now, many people ask, well, why don't they start stagecoaches more often? You know, why do I have to wait so many years to get a stagecoach somewhere? Well, good example. High capital, high risk. You're in a very risky environment. Capital, just think about it. You want to start the Arizona stage line, you have to go out and find the route first, because the route has to have water about every 20 miles. You either have to dig a well or you have to bring water with you. Once you have the route, then you have to set up all those way stations every 10 or 12 miles. And you also have to get all the main stations by either building them or contracting with somebody for them, and all the personnel that go along with that. Now, we're not even talking about the 2 Concord stages you're going to have that are cost $10,000. And then you need at least 100 horses. Horses are around $200, about the same for mules. So all of that money you're putting up front. You haven't made a dime yet. And you're making your money off the mail contract. Guess how many mail contracts there are in Central Arizona? 1. And it's rebid every year. There was one in the south that was rebid every year. Now, the problem is when they rebid the stage contract, they don't necessarily take the best service, they take the lowest bid. So I might put 6 months putting this stage line together, building all these things, and I've only then got 6 months to get a return on my investment before I might lose the contract. If you lose the contract, you have to sell everything at like a fire sale, or I have to find somebody who will let me be their subcontractor. So that's why you don't see a whole lot of stagecoach startups, and you see a lot of stagecoach names changing and station names changing. You can make some more money by contracting with Wells Fargo. They'll pay you to take that box because you're adding risk, right? Now you have bandits looking at you. You're an armed guard free of charge. And then last but not least, just like the trains nowadays, ridership. You can get some, they'll help you if you can get some people on the rail. Now, if you don't get any people toward the end, this is what happens. You know, you try to get as much out of it as you can before you lose the contract. Now, James Grant was an owner and operator of the Arizona stage line. He's a phenomenal guy. That's why I picked him. He left Canada in 1854 at the age of 24, heading for where else? California. He got into California, and by 1855 or so, he had a store in Maryville. By 1860, he had sold the store and moved to San Bernardino and bought an express company, which later became Arizona Stage Line. And by 1866, he was in Prescott, and he bought a store. Sound familiar? And he sold that store after several years and put that money into the stage line. That's what he looked like. That's a picture from 1870. He had several duties while he was in Prescott. He became a territorial auditor, the territorial auditor. He was a store owner. He was the Yavapai County supervisor. And he was also the stage line operator. Busy guy. Of course, his family's still in Canada, his wife and 2 kids. This is his store, James Grant Cash Store. 2 years he had it. I can't remember where it's at. I think it was McCormick and Carrollton. And then he started his stage company to begin in April 1868. This was from La Paz to Wickenburg. And then, at that time, La Paz to Wickenburg, you got on a stagecoach. But guess what happened when you changed to get on to Prescott? Saddle horses. Okay. Now in July, he finally got the route to go all the way by stagecoach, but he still was not using Concord Stage, and it still did not extend to San Bernardino. So now we come to the great day, which is September 28, 1869, when he rides into town in a brand new Concord cage pulled by 6 white mules. He announces there'll be weekly stage service between Prescott, La Paz, connecting to San Bernardino, California. Now this gives you a map of the stage stations as they were in the early days. And you can, some of those names you'll recognize, I believe. Now what happens with stagecoach routes is, once you have a route set up, then you're constantly trying to find out how you shorten it. Because money is time, time is money. So the first time it happened is 1872. Before 1872, if you look at the map, we went through the canyon, Hell's Canyon, down through Date Creek, down here to Wickenburg. That's about 70 miles. But in 1872, we finally got a route that goes right through Peoples Valley and Antelope Station, and that cut off 70 miles. 70 miles is a lot of ways to go in a stagecoach. Now, another thing that happened in 1872, up here, in 1876, Iron Spring Road, from Skull Valley to Prescott, the Miller brothers decided to build a toll road. And they built the toll road. And I'll tell you some of the results of that toll road, but it lasted a very short time, which is unfortunate for one stage station. Because what happened is it became so popular, Yavapai County bought it for $10,000 and opened it to the public. So he had his vision achieved, and this is his wife, Ada, and his great uncle was down here and saw this presentation and sent those pictures to me of them in Prescott in 1870. So she came in 1870. She brought his son, who was 21, Ed, and his daughter, who was 19, Lucy, and they came into Prescott. They stayed here for roughly a year, and then they moved to Wickenburg, which was the home station for the now California-Arizona stage office. And Etta actually run that station in Wickenburg, and James became the president of California and Arizona stage line. And during that period, shortly after that period, he went back to San Bernardino to do what? To find a shorter route to this place, and he died of a heart attack. So, now this is American Ranch. It's sort of out there by Chino Valley, Williams Valley Road area. It originally was, the land was bought, actually traded by a guy by the name of Ferguson Lee. He actually traded with Dan O'Connor, who used to be with the Walker Party. And he traded that land for a gun and some ammunition. And he built a nice little adobe house on there in 1865, 64. And then when all the stage started going by, well, he had lots of business, so he decided to build up this big ranch station. Now, you might say it was a little imprudent because they had already started the toll road. But he thought that no stage people in the right mind are going to pay a toll to go to Prescott. So he figured that as long as he kept the station really nice and with big attraction for the stagecoach operators, they would continue to go through his loop. Unfortunately for him, when they made it a free road, everybody went straight down that road and bypassed him, and that was the end of American Station. This is 1890s pictures of Wickenburg Stage Station. It's a little blurry, but so your eyes are not going bad. It's hard. It's pulled up. It's too old. Now, the Starline Mail Transportation advertisement says that they have transportation from Prescott, Arizona to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And it was established in September 1879 by John Walsh. It was 507 miles. It took 96 hours. And the average speed was about 5.5 miles an hour. The fare was $100. And it shut down in 1882 because of, quote, financial irregularities. Which is, you hear that a lot when you start reading stage line history. The most current one was the last one to start, the Black Canyon Stage Line. That was July 1st, 1894. Now, it had existed before, but the new thing was that now they had the new road to Black Canyon, so you had a more direct route. So the Hawker brothers bought that off of Gilmer and Salisbury, who had bought it off of the Arizona Stage. So a big difference in this one, because there's such a short and straight route, they were allowed to let you take an overnight of 8 hours, contrary to most stages. Now this gives you an idea of the Black Canyon stage line. Any of those look familiar, like Big Bug, Bumblebee? Gillette's no longer there. How many know who Swilling is? Jack Swilling. Anybody know that? Founder of Phoenix. He established that station, and within a year he was arrested for stagecoach robbery. Not only was he arrested, he was convicted, and he was sent to Yuma Prison, where he died. And several months later, he was exonerated. So tells you what happens to famous people. This is Spalding Station, later known as Aquafria Station. Gives you an idea what the station looked like. And then this is the transcontinental stage that everybody's familiar with, the Butterfield stage. On all the advertisements, you see the Concord stage with the nice coloring. That was one of his advertising type situations. And what he did is he got a contract, a mail contract, for 6 years from the federal government. But he had to make the route, he had to build all those stations, get everything done. He also had to get the mail from Tipton, Missouri. Actually, it was St. Louis, but they took it from train to Tipton, Missouri, all the way to San Francisco within 26 days. So, he covered 5 states and 2 territories, Arizona being one of them, 200 plus stations. All of them are 12 to 20 miles apart. The first run, 23 days and 23 hours. So he met the contract. Now, you might think he's really going good. He never made any money. He lost money because in 1861, the Civil War happened and nobody wanted to take the southern route. It was too dangerous. And the Confederates were taking it over. So, now he did use another type of stage. This is a celerity stage again, but he had specially built just for that run. He had about, I don't know what number, I read the number, I don't remember, it was about 19 or 20 of these things, and they were used on a lot of the routes. There's the time schedule if you want to catch them, east to west. You can imagine the logistics to put this thing together and then keep everybody on time. Because remember, if you lose the time 3 or 4 times, you miss the mail, out goes the bid. Because they always had the clause in there to throw out the contract if they weren't satisfied with your work. Now I want to talk a little bit about hostile Indian attacks. Like I said previously, there weren't too many of them, but when they did occur, they were reported in the newspaper. Also, a lot of them are historical knowledge. The first one I want to talk about happened right between Wickenburg and La Paz. This was more or less an ambush. Mr. Tinley was driving the stage. He had 4 passengers on it. The Indians were laid in wait behind the bushes, and when the stage got close enough, they opened up. The Indians had weapons at that time, not just arrows. And when they fired the guns, the horses panicked and ran right through the Indians. Finally, Tinley got control of the horses and put them back on the road. By the time the Indians were able to gather up again, he was long gone to the station. Unfortunately, 3 passengers and himself all received wounds during that attempt. How many know about the Wickenburg Massacre? Very close. Just go out to US 60, it's La Paz Road, and you can see the monument yourself. The monument's not exactly where it happened a little bit down in the field from there. Whether the inscription on the monument's right, we can argue about all day, but that's what's on there. Really, we have a stage that's attacked by someone, probably Indians, and they kill 5 passengers and a driver almost immediately. 2 passengers survive by jumping out of the side door. One of them is Molly Shepard, and the other one is a Mr. Kroger, who is a paymaster for one of the mines. And they crawled through the bushes, and I won't go through the whole story of how he dragged her along, and he said he dragged her 15 miles or something like that. Nobody believes that, but anyway, they got to area out in the bushes, and the next stage coming the other way, they were able to flag it down and get help. Now, what the controversy is that there were cases in there where people, white people like us, pretended to be Indians. And there were also Mexicans that did the same thing, and they would pull off these stage attacks or station attacks, and they would get blamed, and they didn't have to worry about it. Now, so there were 2 sets of stories about that. One has to do with them. The Molly Shepard was from Prescott. She was thrown out because she was a prostitute and she had a lot of money with her. The paymaster had a lot of money with him. The money was never recovered anywhere, as far as I know. So that was one of the theories. Well, they're probably involved in this thing, and they basically set it up somehow. The other one is one of the station people women told one of the Mexican riders, don't go on the stage today because it's going to be robbed. And that's another theory. But there's a civilian inquest, which in those days was a little bit sloppy. But both Shepard and the guy said in their original statements that it was definitely Indians. They were wearing blue army pants, the types that were issued at Date Creek Reservation. The other thing is, the Army did a pretty extensive inquiry. General Cook ordered it. Their conclusion was it was Indians from the Date Creek Reservation. Of course, nobody on the Date Creek Reservation would admit it, and no one was ever found or convicted of this crime. So, but it is one of the most infamous Indian attacks. Now, we go down south, we go to Apache Page stage station. Now, when Mr. Butterfield started running the room, he knew he had to go through Indian lands. There's no way you're going to go through 5 states and 2 territories without going through Indian land somewhere. So he negotiated beforehand. The first thing he negotiated was 12 stations in Choctaw Land. And he didn't have to do anything for that until about a month later after he started running it. And then they charged him 50 cents for every stagecoach that came through. Then he met with Cochise in 1851 because the only water in that type in Arizona near that area, Apache Pass, is Apache Springs. So he made a deal with Cochise that he could go through there and get water. In July 1858, they built the Apache Pass stage station directly in the middle of Chiricahua territory. It was like a fort. It had about 4 rooms. It had mortar walls, 6 to 8 feet high, and a corral. Now, everything seemed to go pretty well, so he's getting through there with no problem. Then came the Bascom affair. Anybody know about the Bascom affair? No, it's not about somebody named Bascom having an affair. It's the Bascom affair. The Bascom affair has to do with a shaved-tail lieutenant, that's a brand new second lieutenant, a cattleman named John Ward, an Indian leader called Cochise, and an alleged kidnapping. So Lieutenant Bascom is sitting in Fort Bowie, and he gets word from John Ward, who comes running in and saying, guess what happened? Those Indians came in and took my cattle, and by the way, they took my son. He's 12 and a half. And I demand that you go out and get him. So this lieutenant, and we don't know whether he had orders from headquarters to do this or whether he did it on, that's a controversy. But he decides, I'm going to call Cochise to come in under a flag of truce and find out what's happening. So Cochise, many of his family members and some Indians come in unarmed, and they come in and they have this big tent where they're going to meet. So as soon as Cochise gets in the tent, Lieutenant Bascom accuses him of taking the boy and the cattle and says, if you don't get him back here, you're going to be in big trouble. And of course, Cochise says, I didn't take him. I don't know where they are, but I could look for them. Well, the tribes might have taken him. He said, I don't believe you. Now, one of the things is, believe it or not, Cochise had a good reputation for being honest, whatever he said. But anyway, so they went back and forth in a while, and then Cochise noticed the soldiers were armed and they were starting to surround the tent. Well, he pulled a knife out of his boot, cut a hole in the tent, and took off and escaped in a volley of fire. And several of the Indians were killed, but all of his relatives, his male and female relatives, were held captive by the army. And Bascom says, and when you bring that boy and cattle back, we'll give you their back. So Cochise gives him one up. He waits a week or two. He can't get movement. So he attacks the wagon train and takes all those people hostage. And he writes back, sends a note back to Lieutenant Bascom, you let my people go and I'll let your people go. To which Bascom replies, I don't do those kind of things. So Cochise, true to his word, kills all the hostages. And then Bascom decides, well, then I'm going to hang your 2 nephews and your brother, which he does. He lets the wife go, and that is actually the trigger for the Apache Wars. Because from that time frame on, Cochise is killing any white person he sees anywhere, and of course that doesn't help the overland stage. Because in February 16th, 1881, the first and only attack on the overland stage was made. And in that attack, 2 horses were killed. They ambushed the stage, they killed 2 horses, and the driver and another party ran out to the horses under the cover of fire from the passengers, cut the horses loose, and they got back on the stage and were able to make it safely back to the fortified Stagecoach station. The Indians never attacked the stage station, but they did attack the horse corral, which was a little distance from there. But that's the one and only time there was an attack on the overland stage. Now, this is kind of ridiculous. If you've been paying attention at all, usually one person holds up a stage. And with that number of people, it is a little bit crowded. And you notice some of the bandits are on horses. There's only been 1 or 2 stagecoach robberies in history where people have been on horses. Why do you want to chase a stage when you can just walk out of a bush with a gun and stop it? This is what was in the May 1885 edition of the Weekly Miner. New job up here. Now this is a summary of stagecoach operations. 137 robberies, 34 were in Yavapai County. 4 passengers were killed, 2 stage drivers were killed, and 2 armed messengers were killed. That's really not many people killed. I know one's too many, but that's not many. So it tells you that most stagecoach operations, when they had an attack or a robbery, people were not killed in it. You know. Now this is Brazen Bill Basilton. Anybody know Brazen Bill? A very famous outlaw. I'm surprised you don't know who he is. Anyway, one night's day in September 27, 1887, he decided to rob the stage going to California from Prescott. On the stage was Ed Buck and his mother and father and his children, and there was one John Gillis on there. I don't know who he is, but he's not a member of the family. And then there was a person named D.C. Thorne. Anybody know D.C. Thorne? He was a very famous person. He was one of the ones that owned a cabinet saloon. And, anyway, they were on the stage. They were carrying a lot of gold. Inside, Ed Beck had 2 gold ingots. Each one was $4,000. The family itself had thousands of dollars. When he stopped the stage, he asked him to throw down the box. The box had $1,700 in it. And while he was getting the money and having D.C. Thorne cut the mailbags open, guess what happened? His mask slipped. So now he can recognize him. So Basil calls up to the driver and says, "Are your horses shell-shocked?" Meaning, if I fire a gun, will they run? And the driver says, "They are pretty steady, but remember, we have women and children in the coach." So Baston, even though he had been seen, didn't do anything to Thorne. Later on, he was killed in some ambush by sheriff's department. But another interesting thing is D.C. Thorne down in the cabinet several months later, guess who walks in? Basil. They both see each other. Basil turns around and leaves. Thorne doesn't tell anybody because he feels grateful that he wasn't killed while the fire was going, when the stagecoach was robbed. This is one on the one to Santa Fe. I put that up there because 4 robbers were involved in it, but not only was a passenger killed, but this station manager was killed, and this was very close to Fort Verde. And $75,000 was missing. So they took that, the robbers took it, but the robbers were then caught, and there was no money. And they said, "We don't know where the money's at." So go out there with your shovels. Phoenix to Prescott stage robbery, 3 Mexican robbers. Billy Thompson, the passenger, was killed, and the mail was taken. Now these robbers were caught. I say caught. They were hunted down by a posse who killed them all, and one of the posse men got killed. Now only thing they got to begin with was a mailbag. So it just tells you don't know what they're going to do on a stagecoach robbery. Guess who these are? First female stagecoach, Pearl Hart and Joe Boot. By the way, nobody really knows what his name is. That's what Pearl called him, Joe Boot. They were a young guy and gal. They wanted to make some quick money. They decided to rob a stage coming out of Globe. They succeeded in stopping the cage while Joe Boot held the shotgun on the people. Pearl went down and divested them of their valuables, as we talked about. They got about $400, and she decided to take the gun from the stagecoach driver. Within a few weeks, they were captured. They were both put on trial for stagecoach robbery. Joe Boot got 30 years in Yuma prison. Pearl Hart was found not guilty, and the judge was so disgusted with it, he rearrested her for stealing the gun, and she got 5 years for stealing the gun. Neither one of them served any length of time. After a year and a half, Joe Boot escaped because they made him a trustee and never seen again. Pearl Hart, in 2.5 years, she decided to report that she was pregnant. Now, if you think about this, she's the only woman in the prison. Who could have impregnated her? Because she only had trustees, the chaplain, and the governor of the prison visiting her. So they let her out after 2.5 years. Then she went on stage to reenact the stagecoach robbery and made a lot of money. Okay. She ended up dying in Globe and was buried there. Now this one, you recognize the stage. This stage is the one we have in the transportation building. It was involved in one of the most famous stagecoach robberies down near Tombstone in Benson. It was a trip between Tombstone and Benson. Bob Paul was the driver, and he switched with Phil Polpot because Bob Paul had a sore hand. And when he took over as a shotgun, unfortunately, when they were stopped, he raised the shotgun and they shot him and killed him. After they shot and killed him, they took off and left $26,000 in the stagecoach. And they were never caught. Nobody was ever found to be caught by that, but this is the actual stagecoach. How about, these people? Wyatt Earp and Virgil Earp. Add in Pat Masterson. That was who formed as a posse to catch these people. They went after them. They didn't catch him, but they did catch Lister George. And I don't know, it doesn't say why they thought he was involved. But anyway, they got a confession out of him. And the confession said that 4 of the Clanton boys out of the Clanton gang did it. Well, that ended there. All the Clanton stuff in Tombstone and the Earps. So nobody did anything, and nobody followed up on this. Last one in Arizona, 1903. This is a little lady that inherited a gold mine out in Quartzsite. And she went out there to pick up the remnants of what was left, and she got to put it in a large bullion bar and put it in the stagecoach. So she's coming back, and on the way, the stagecoach gets stopped, and guess what the robbers want? They asked specifically for the large gold bullion bar. So they take the bar, they're never caught, it's not even reported in the newspapers because she didn't want it reported in the newspapers, and nobody ever figured out how much the bar was worth because she would not say what it was worth. She was embarrassed. 2 more incidents. This is an easy one. If you ever look through all the papers that I do in the 1800s, you're very lucky if you can actually find a black stagecoach accident. This was on the Black Canyon stage route. They went off the side. The stagecoach was destroyed, but the passengers were not harmed. I don't know how that does, but that's what the newspaper said. Now, this one has to do with 3 favored people: Sheriff Bucky O'Neill, the Deputy Price Behan, and a drunken stage driver. In November, it was snowing heavily. They were at a hotel here in Prescott. They got on the stage along with 2 nuns, an engineer, and a salesman. Sounds like a bar joke, right? They all got on there, and they start out. It's snowing pretty heavily. They go up toward Sunset Reach to go over toward Wickenburg. And as they're going up the hill, after about 2 hours, they get to the very top, and the stagecoach operator stops the stage, which is reasonable, to go out and check the team. So it's got a lot of snow, so he's kind of stumbling along, going out there to check. He checks the team, and then he starts coming back. And Bucky O'Neill notices he stops about halfway and takes a bottle out of his pocket and takes a couple swigs. Then he walks back further and gets on the stage. And before they know it, he releases the brake, and he's going down the other side of the hill with an Apache whipping the mules to go faster. And so it doesn't become long till they realize this guy's drunk as a skunk, and he's going to kill us. So they devise a plan where Sheriff O'Neill grabs a hold of the roof rail, and the marshal gives him a boost so he can get up behind the driver. And then once he's up there, he pulls up Behan in a coordinated attack because the driver has no idea what's going on. Bucky O'Neill go-ropes him, which means you grab him by the back and just pull him up on the back of the stage. And at the same time, the marshal grabs the reins and stops the stage. Then they handcuff him, and they put him in the boot. And they go to Big Bug, which is the next station, and they turn him over to the Big Bug station so he can go to Prescott for trial. This is a Concord stage in front of the palace in 1895. So, isn't it an adventure?